Hello and welcome to another episode on the Life Server podcast. And in today's episode, we will be sharing our thoughts on self-love with you and how it is so foundational for pretty much everything that we do. And yet it's so much harder to love ourselves than it is to love others, simply because we know all of our shadows and shortcomings, whereas we mostly only get glimpses of them in others.
And so today we want to demystify and debunk some of the common beliefs around self-love and talk about why it's not selfish and even necessary to love yourself unconditionally. So this month in the Life Surfers, we've been talking about self-love. Why? Because as we served our last beach, the soul purpose beach, it was a topic that kept coming up over and over. And many of our surf buddies, including us, seem to struggle with it, right? And mostly that is, how we talked about like how a lack of self-love can keep us from living our best life and our soul purpose.
Hmm. And in human design, it's actually the shadow expression of self-love that is self-obsession, which not only speaks to narcissism, but also to the way we over analyze our actions, how we, wrap ourselves in self-doubt and self-criticism. But what we have found most people connect with self-love is actually selfishness. And we had to debunk that this month. Because the truth is that only when we're able to truly love ourselves, love even our shadow aspect, our imperfections, and our perceived shortcomings, and only then are we able to truly love others, and not in this transactional way of, if you do this, then I will love you, or not conditionally and not performative. So not because somebody does something or is something or gives us something, but simply because they are. And for that to be possible, we have to learn to meet ourselves from a place of pure love. And that doesn't mean that we become these uncontrolled animals and you know don't criticize ourselves for the things that that go off track, that we don't realize that anymore. But it's really that, like, we don't lose that inner compass that corrects us on our path. It's really the contrary, because we get more effective in leading ourselves, because, as we know from psychology, positive affirmations work so much better than punishment, right?
They do, yes. And it's nonetheless, like many people, when they hear the word of self-love, automatically they just go right into that judgment, right?
Mm.
And that it's selfish to only think about oneself. And so oftentimes they confuse self-love with narcissism, as you
Mm.
already mentioned when we look in this human design aspect of this. But actually, it is very far from either. So if you feel triggered by this expression like self-love, if this is too big of a word, we would actually like to invite you to rather think of it differently, or rephrase it along the lines of like self-compassion, or like accepting yourself, self-acceptance, self-worth, and these kind of rephrases might make it a little bit easier for you to tap into it actually. And obviously it stands, self-love or all of these self-compassion stand in direct contrast to self-loathing, which is the state when you constantly hear that inner nagging, usually very critical voice that puts yourself down, right? And it makes you believe that you are flawed and a failure and incapable of everything, doing everything good enough, or not being not good enough in any way, right?
Mm. Yeah, and I want to add that, this is a very protective mechanism. So there's
Mhm.
nothing essentially bad about this inner critic, except that it makes us feel bad. But it's like it's a coping mechanism to stay safe. We learned that these aspects of ourselves are not safe to express. So this inner critic keeps us small and keeps these things, like, um reduced, so we are safe. So
Yeah.
it comes from a place of love. It just doesn't feel like love.
And to get the bow over to the science part, it's not even, it comes from a place of love. It comes from evolution,
Mm.
because naturally our brains have more tissue that processes in a negative way than in a positive. And it's like Chris said, it's to keep us safe in an evolutionary standpoint. And other, like physiologically speaking, there's lots and lots of studies that actually have shown that self-love or self-compassion, as you want to rephrase it, has such a profound impact on our health. It's our immune system gets boosted, and we actually live longer if we have that capacity. And on an emotional side of things, it has also been shown that self-love significantly increases happiness and joy in life, which might not be a surprise.
Yes. I was just going to say, if you don't hear so much of that critical voice, it's crazy that you feel more joy. Yeah, and all of this is based on a rather complex interplay between your prefrontal cortex, which is a very new evolutionary brain area that like an increased self-awareness and self-reflection and creativity, whereas our amygdala, where we experience fear and stress, that is downregulated when we express self-love. And yeah, and all of that obviously is linked to a regulated nervous system, as so much like it's almost like every topic we look into is like
Everything.
regulate your nervous system.
It always
It's
comes back
really,
to it.
yeah, it's really hilarious. And what I love about it is that it's the same areas, the same brain areas that are lit up or reduced in activity when we tap into intuition. And that just like it blows my mind. And we could go on about this forever, but let's not go down that rabbit hole. But instead, yeah, it's really about learning to fill your own cup, to be loving towards yourself instead of expecting other people to love the parts of you that you can't love yourself. Because if you are able to do that first, then it's easy for others to do that as well. But we need to be the first ones. Like we go first. We love ourselves first. We fill our own cup first. We put on our own max oxygen mask first, because then we can be there for others as well.
Absolutely. And what I also found super interesting, and yeah, did you actually know that in practically all old wisdom traditions, self-love is considered foundational
Mm.
and basically our default state. Like in Buddhism or in Tibetan language, for example, there's not even a word for like anything like self-hate or self-loathing or something. Or like, yeah, so the Dalai Lama is actually, there's a story
I was
going
thinking of
around
that story.
that
Yeah.
that he was super shocked that like he couldn't understand that concept of literally being your own enemy, and he debated with a like with a translator to actually really grasp what people were talking about. And even like in Christ, for example, in Christianity, you're told to love your neighbor as yourself, making it like really like the prerequisite for you to need to treat yourself with love and respect first. Otherwise, how could you treat your neighbor like that if you don't
Mm.
even start with yourself, right? It's like this
And it's
conundrum.
yeah, but that I always struggled with it, because I always thought, oh, it's so much easier to love my neighbor than it is to love myself, right? Because I don't know all the crap about my neighbor. I know all the crap about myself, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like how, and but in this module that really came out so brilliantly, like, that the foundation of it and how we are doing it, like how do we actually love ourselves, right?
Yeah. And it's also interesting that like it's only become really a thing to be so critical of ourselves for the last, say, like 50 to 60 years. If you remember, like in the 60s, like peace, love, and happiness, right? And then after that, it kind of started to really shift when society has then become all about like competition, capitalist consumerism, and like really going into this kind of aggressive self-interest and feeling entitled over others, right? And yeah, so basically that development made us to become more and more detached from these internal values, and instead like seeking more and more external success and validation, that we've disconnected from that source of love that's internal of us. We just look outside for solutions, whereas we could just really tune inwards and start with us, and that will have then the ripple effect outside of us as well.
Mm,
So the opposite way,
absolutely.
basically.
Yes. And I think the like I see a big cause of that in how our school system works because in
Mm.
there we're
Yeah.
trained for competition and we're
Yeah.
trained for outside recognition. We're trained for outside solutions, like we learn the solutions. We don't come up with the solutions in school, right? And
Yeah.
all these things like we're taught to respond and act like that, right? And to make
Mhm.
love conditional and transactional and all of that. So it's not a surprise, and it's like an unlearning of that and a remembering of who we truly are and what we're made of. Like when we're born, no baby thinks like, oh my God, my feet are too
Yeah.
fat or
Yeah.
whatever, right?
I think
And
it starts at 5 years old or something, where they
mhm,
become like aware of these kind of like body,
yeah,
that's my body and how it looks and
mhm,
feels like and stuff. But like, yeah, the first years, like they're just so happy, right? And so,
exactly. Yeah.
and I also love that, like my son, he's 8 now, and his school actually, they started to have this in school where they say, how did you fill your bucket this week? How did you
Mhm.
feel like your kindness bucket and your
Mm.
own like energy bucket and these? So that I we never had that, but so
No,
that's
yeah,
so my
really
hope is
cool.
that there is a little bit change in the air.
Yes, absolutely. And also, how we raise our kids in comparison to how consciously,
Absolutely.
unconsciously we were raised. Like,
Yeah.
go to the forest and come back for dinner. Bye bye. You
Absolutely.
know?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. And it was really like that. But yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and my biggest aha moment this month was really that I used situations where I was triggered inside or outside to meet myself, the situation, and the other people from a place of love. And to kind of say, okay, wow, I'm so critical right now. I'm so judgmental right now. What would it look like when I meet this or myself or whatever from a place of love instead of also fear, right? Because I had quite a few critical situations in these past weeks
Mhm.
again where I was initially triggered into fear. And then I thought, okay, that is an option, but I have a different option as well. I can be in love. And how those situations then panned out was so mind blowing and so magical. Like, oh my God, I couldn't even have, like, when I said I choose to be in love in this situation, I couldn't even imagine what a good outcome of the situation could be. What would it look like? Like, I
Mhm.
couldn't even come up with a really positive best case scenario that would really be best case. And then it happened. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think of that. And that felt like pure magic. And it is like in the beginning, it takes quite a bit of a shift to change that perspective. But once you've done it several times, it becomes quite automatic and it happens quicker and quicker that you can make the switch and the results come quicker and quicker. And to me, that is actually the choice that we have when we activate our free will. That's the choices that we make. Not do we go there or do we go there? Do we do this or do we do that? But do we do it with love or do we do it with fear or with judgment or with all of that? Right. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
blew
right
my
now, I
mind.
actually have this aha moment because just yesterday or 2 days ago, I heard this Howard professor talk about love and fear, and that there is, again, I have to take it back to the brain, but that there is actually love and fear are both processed in different hemispheres.
Mm,
So if love activates, don't nail me on it, the right or left hand, the right hemisphere, and then fear activates
yes,
like
logical
networks in the
makes
right.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's also, again, back to neuroplasticity. The more you practice your love pathways,
Mm-hmm.
the less you will need your fears, and then the whole brain will shift towards that, and then that's how you, with practice, as with
Yeah.
everything, right,
Mm,
can actually get into that state more easily and more often.
mm.
Yeah.
And also because like we said before with the inner critic, it's the punishment, right?
Yeah.
But when you practice this and you get these miraculous results, there is such a high how do you call it? Not benefit or bonus, but like a reward right? The
Mm.
reward effect is so high that it's like a dopamine, serotonin, and like all the happy hormone get like, you know,
Oxytocin.
yes, all of that, you know, and it like it floods your system, and that makes it even more attractive to
Hmm.
come from that place the next time and like wow, 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 you know. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
So cool. But yeah, and one other thing for me was actually to realize that every one of us is love innately. Okay, we are all loved by whatever energy or source or universe or whatever you believe in. There is the source of abundance of love, and it's limitless. And you are exactly the way you're supposed to be in this very moment. And this love is embracing you. And it's just your limited body that kind of feels limited in that love, but like you actually have like limitless reflow if you tap into that source, right? And for me, for example, reconnecting to nature and the abundance in nature and that peace and calm that comes with it, and that energy source that is out there on a regular basis. That's what, for example, for me makes big difference, and that helps me to tap into that feeling.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously we are also a part of nature, like we are
Yes,
nature.
yes,
And so when we are in nature, we reconnect to like, wow, look,
yeah,
nature is like it cannot but explode in spring, right?
yes,
It cannot but be abundant and just like throw around apples, and,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And we are like that if we
Yeah.
don't
So
limit ourselves so much with our
exactly. If you
brains.
take
Mm,
away that separation that we feel
mm,
oftentimes, right? If we
mm,
realize that we're actually part of it and we're not completely separated. However, yeah, it seems very ingrained in us that we have to care for everyone and everything around us first, especially as a mom, you will understand that. Like, I mean, there is always the societal pressure of like, put your children first. Yeah, and it's like it's so many things that society tells us like we should be doing, as the stories we grow up with hearing over and over, even like if we tell them ourselves by our experiences, or we've been told them by our parents, our upbringing and whatnot. It's just so ingrained. And again, simply by knowing here that we are in this here in this moment, in this human body, in this life on earth, is enough to know that you're here for a reason, and that's an expression of love, right? And so to know that you're trying really to do and give it your best no matter what, even if sometimes it doesn't turn out the way you envision. That's all that it needs.
mm. Yeah, and you know, when it doesn't turn out the way we envisioned, to know that it was meant to turn out like that nonetheless, and that we can be in love with ourselves nonetheless, or
Yeah.
especially, you know, like when a kid did something and got a bad grade for it, we can love them, you know, through that,
Hmm.
and we can love ourselves through that as well. And yeah, something else I wanted to add was that, you know, as moms, it's not only societal that we feel that pressure, I believe, but also evolutionary. Like we
Right.
want to do that, and it's
Yeah.
really hard to set the boundaries of where do we stop. And that's why
Yeah.
we have not only so in Germany we call them helicopter parents,
Hmm.
but the ones that go even further are the lawnmower parents, because
Oh.
they mow the lawn so that the kids don't even have a piece of grass to stumble over, right? So
Oh.
it gets really intense, and that's why also boundaries were a big topic in the past weeks
Mm.
for us in the Life Surfers, because you know when we set boundaries, it's like when we set loving boundaries, it helps the growth and the thriving of everybody, not just of ourselves to refill our own cups and all of that, but also to allow others to stand in their light, to stand in their strength, to see what they're capable of when we don't take responsibility for everything and everybody all the time, everywhere, you know. And so that was a big lesson for me to learn also, because
Yeah.
yeah, recovering people pleaser and empath and all of
Oh,
that.
absolutely. And that's a whole different podcast we could do
Yes.
on that alone.
Oh my goodness, yes. Um, yeah, so we want to share some ways of how we can practically practice self-love, like in real life every day. And one way that I have found to be super simple, not always easy, is something that a near-death experiencer with the name of Jonathan Ashford, that I listened to quite a few podcasts from him, shared, is to daily create a practice of, and we're also running this in our community as an experiment, stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself how much you love you, how much you love yourself. And for me, it actually only takes a very short time to really feel seen by myself. And that makes me start to cry. And yeah, Jonathan says, do this until you throw up. This has not happened to me, but I have started crying very quickly. And yeah, it's it's really gentle, and it's really the question of how much can you love yourself and how gentle can you be with yourself on the days that this doesn't come easy, and really watch yourself evolve and how you connect and engage with other people, your expectations of other people, how they change as you become the person you need, right? And that's not to say you have to become completely independent and you have to do it all yourself and all of that, but it makes life so much easier on other people when you don't have those expectations on them anymore, right?
Mm.
When you fill your own cup.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like when you said that, or Jonathan said, like, until you throw up, it's like, that doesn't make sense because
Yes.
that's a negative
Yes.
feedback loop, and then you don't want to do it again. So it's like the crying
Yeah.
might be
Yeah.
a better way out.
Yeah, because to me the crying is like really soul connection.
Just
When I'm in my
releasing
heart, yes,
energy.
it's like I feel seen, I feel the soul connection, and I have that with other people as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good tears.
It makes much more sense, yes.
Hmm.
But yeah, and there's another few things that you can just start on with yourself. For example, just simply stopping for a moment in your tracks when you hear that inner critic, that nagging voice, right? And literally just try to mentally step aside from that and become the observer. Don't identify with it, but rather meet it with curiosity and ask where it's coming from, and just cultivate some self-awareness around these things. You can also just remind yourself of how unconditional love feels like. So, for example, if you think about your if you have kids, what you feel for them, that is hopefully unconditionally love.
Yeah, especially
Or
when you held the baby in
yes,
arms the
absolutely,
first time,
that's
like, oh my God.
yes. Or how you would feel towards a puppy or your own pet, right? So this is just to get your physical body into that feeling and immerse yourself in that feeling of how it feels. Um, you can start talking to you like you're your best friend, because yeah, how do you talk to your best friends? You would not put them down, so just start talking the same language to yourself. And always, always, always give yourself grace. You're doing a great job. You're doing the best that you know and you can in any given moment. I'm sure of that. And just give yourself grace for that.
And the same goes for everybody else. Like, even if you see
Yes.
people who you believe could be doing a better job, they are simply doing the best they can. Nobody does anything bad on purpose. How do I say this? Yeah, I truly believe that the people who seem to do things on purpose badly, um, like their evolution created them to be like, if you were in their shoes, that would be the best thing you could do as well. So I try to come from
Oh, sorry.
what?
Yes.
Go.
You can try to come home.
A place of love for them as
Yes.
well, because I don't I don't know if I would be a better person than them and act differently than them if I had had the same experiences.
Yeah. And my O was just like, of course, the loving kindness prayer for
Oh yeah. Hmm.
mantra from,
Metta.
again, from Buddhism. It's like where you first extend the love to yourself and the wishes, but then you do extend them to others, and
Hmm.
even to like the whole universe,
And
or
all in between, you extend it to the people that you struggle with.
that you
Right.
Yes, exactly. So there's those different steps, which
Mm-hmm.
might be quite challenging, but it's exactly that kind of practice where you
Mm-hmm.
start with yourself and then neutral people, some that you or other people, no, actually a lot of people that you love, then neutral people, then difficult people, and then the whole wide
World.
world.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such a powerful practice for sure.
Mm, absolutely. Yes, and that's it for our recap of this current module on self-love, which we are actually, as we're recording, we're still in the midst of it for a couple of weeks. So what if you feel that what you've heard is relevant to you, and if you want to dive into this and it could support you where you're at in your life at the moment, come join us. There is plenty of time for you to catch up with everything. And the next topic that our community has voted for in the coming month is rhythms and cycles. And that includes hormonal cycles, light cycles, seasonal cycles, and any other cycles that we can come up with in the meantime. And if you have a cycle that you would love for us to address, you can drop it in the comments below. And yeah, if you're curious about that, we'll be kicking it off on May 18th, and you can find the link and how to join us in the show notes below. And that is it for today. And we send you much love.
Of
And
course.
look, it's not coming. It's not coming. Where's the self-love? Oh,
Ah,
look,
that's the first
oh,
time, literally the first time it worked for me. That's a sign. That's a sign.
that's
I'll
love.
take it.
Okay, see you next time and have a
See
great time
ya.
until then. And hope to see you in the live servers.
Yes. Take care.
Bye.